But without further ado, I'm excited to introduce Angela Jaffe, who is the secretary of the Central Jersey Beekeepers Association. And you're gonna learn about honeybees. I'm excited. My name means honeybee. I was telling her that whole story because I'm geeking out right now. But her branch is part of the New Jersey Beekeepers Association, and part of what they do is to educate our community. So thank you so much, and take it away. So you're gonna put your hand up to the right side of your face, and then it should, wait, hold still. Try again, and then I might be confusing it. Put your hand down, back up. It should follow you.
Yeah,
there we go.
goes.
It's gonna start following you. It's just a little slow.
Okay. Well, I'm very happy to be here as part of the lecture series of Option Green, and I'd like to thank the co-sponsors, the East Brunswick Friends of the Environmental Commission, which is, so I'm very pleased to be here, and very happy that all of you are here to join me on this journey. Okay, so, and my name is Angela Jaffe. I'm a retired school teacher. I taught in the middle school for 37 years, science, math, and technology, and I am still standing, so that's a good thing. Oh, it's not, okay.
Try again. Wait at it.
Come on. She's not,
It
no,
was
I'm
working
gonna
a minute
stand.
ago.
Okay, here we go.
Wait,
Well,
wait,
it goes
stay
off and
still.
on.
One more time.
Okay,
Okay, it's blinking now. It should follow you. Let's see. If you move over.
No.
Come on. Nope.
she's not. She's
You were
not
working before.
following.
You were so shy before. So try again.
Okay,
Okay.
now,
It's thinking it should follow you.
okay. All right, well, I'll just
We'll keep playing
think
with it.
I'll
I will see.
remember.
I will monitor.
Okay,
It was moving with you before.
yes, it was, it
So there's
was.
like-
Oh, now see.
Now it is.
Yeah, now
There
it's
we go.
moving. Okay, good.
There we go. See?
All right, so now I want you to not think of the reason why I'm here, okay? Because there's a question that I would like you to think about. And this question is, what living creature has these traits? Black and brown, God bless you, furry, loyal and dedicated, intelligent, hardworking, trustworthy, and protective. So what comes to your mind when a dog? Any particular dog? What? Ah, golden retriever. Are they black and brown? Some of them? Okay, what else? What other dog might come to your mind? Kind of a very protective dog.
A Chihuahua.
A Chihuahua, yeah, but I'm thinking of a bigger dog. Anybody?
Shepherd.
What? A shepherd. Okay, I thought that that's what you would say. This is my shepherd, Schultz. He has all of those traits. However, there is another organism here on Earth that has those same traits, but they are minuscule compared to this huge German shepherd. And that is Apis mellifera, the honeybee. Look at her. She's furry, she's black and brown, she's so smart, you will not believe how smart she is. She is trustworthy, she is devoted, she's dependable, and she is protective. The same traits that a German shepherd, a big German shepherd has. However, she is mighty in our survival here on Earth. So she's really very important. You know, according to entomologists, the biomass of insects is 400 pounds, 400 pounds per acre. That's what it is. But the biomass of all of us is only 14 pounds per acre. So clearly the insects are the landowners, we're just the tenants. But insects represent the good, bad, and the ugly. The good, well, they make honey. They're also food for wildlife, okay? The bad, sometimes they put holes in our clothes like moths, all right? And sometimes they're pests like flies in the summertime. And the ugly, some of them do cause diseases like malaria, yellow fever, limes, etc. However, in just our existence, okay, living here, building buildings, roads, streets, houses, we have eliminated a lot of their natural foraging areas, all of the things that they love to eat. And so we've gotten the reputation of pollinator destroyer, okay? So my focus is to show you the power of this honeybee and how important she is and how we must try to protect her and the other pollinators that we have, okay? which everybody can do a part in protecting them. A lot of small little parts leads to a big effect, okay? So it doesn't matter what your role is, as long as you're conscious of trying to protect them. And then maybe one backyard at a time, we can change our reputation from pollinator destroyer to pollinator protector, which is so important for us. So look at the honeybees. They're highly socialized, which means they live in groups. They have 3 body parts, 1 pair of antennae, 3 pairs of legs, 1 or 2 pairs of wings, but they've existed for a few million years. They're like the shark. A shark, same thing. It's existed for millions of years because it's been able to adapt. The honeybee can adapt, okay? If you look at the honeybee, it is different than a yellow jacket. The yellow jacket is not a bee, it is a wasp, okay? Bees have clear wings, just as you see in the picture. They're furry because they attract the pollen. That's what the pollen sticks to, and they bring it back to their hive. They feed on nectar, okay? And they're not aggressive because they don't want to sting you. They just want to go to the flowers, okay? But on the other hand, a yellow jacket is a wasp. It has dark wings. That's how you can tell. Look at the wings, they're dark. It is sleek, no fur on it. Just a couple little hairs maybe, but no fur like the honeybee. It feeds on larvae or protein. That's why it comes after you at your barbecues. It wants meat. It wants ham, okay? And it is aggressive. It'll chase you, all right? So that's the difference. They are related because they belong to the same class, Hymenoptera. However, they're cousins. They are not in the same species. They are just cousins, very different organisms. But the honeybees are not native. They came from Europe, and they came with the colonists in the 1600s. In fact, they came in little things like this, a skep. Can you imagine trying to get honey out of this? I'm sure they got stung a lot, but it was much bigger than this. But this is just a model. So it's not following me, but I don't, oh, maybe it is. Okay. So they came from Europe, and when the Indians first saw them, since they were so strange looking, the Indians never saw anything like it. I mean, they had native bees, but not a honeybee. And they would call them the white man's flies because it was a strange organism, okay? But however, since the climate was very similar, they adapted. And sure enough, swarms made their way to Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, all over, Wisconsin, all over the United States, all over North America. So take a look at the 3 inhabitants. You have a worker bee, you have queen bee, and you have a drone. The worker is female, the queen is female, and the drone is male. They look different. They all live together. They look different because they have to do different jobs. So their bodies take on a whole different thing to allow them to function with their job. All right? So those are the 3 inhabitants. So tell me, who runs the hive? Yes, the queen bee. Anybody else? Okay, I'm going to describe their jobs. So here's the queen bee. She's the mother of all the bees, and she's right over here. Okay, she's really pretty big. In fact, she's doing her job. She's laying eggs. Here's some eggs right here. There's another one there, okay? And you'll see right there, there's another one, okay, right there. She's surrounded by her attendants who do everything for her. They feed her, they take care of her, they clean her, etc. They do everything, all right? She has to mate with a drone to produce fertilized eggs. In fact, when she emerges, she takes a flight around and she will mate with about 18 drones or so. And she stores all that genetic material in her abdomen and then comes back to the hive, okay? She has to lay 2,000 eggs a day, not a week, not a month, a day. So she's a busy lady. She could live for up to 5 years because most of the time she's in the hive and she's protected. But she releases a perfume called a pheromone. And this is very important because it allows all the worker bees who go out to forage on the flowers, when they come back, they can smell her and they know which hive to go to. They'll only go to their hive where their queen is. She's fed a special food. It's called royal jelly, and her attendants make it in their salivary glands. It's made on demand. It's not stored like honey. It's made just on demand for that queen. It's like a super hormone. It makes her fertile, okay? And of course, if you look at her wings, she's got little short wings. Her wings are like the wings of a Cessna on a 747. They don't work on a big plane, okay? So she has little wings probably because she doesn't really fly much. But there will be times where she has to fly. But notice how little, short, and stubby they are. And of course, she does have a stinger. And her stinger is interesting because it doesn't have a barb on it. When you get stung by a bee, the bee leaves the stinger in you because it has a barb and it gets stuck in you, and the bee flies away and it's hemorrhaging. It leaves part of its body there, which is pulsing the venom into your body. Okay, that's why you got to get the stinger out right away. But the queen stinger is not barbed. It's smooth. She can sting as much as she wants, and she won't lose her stinger, okay? Because it just smoothly comes right out. Okay, so that's the queen. Now we have the worker. And here she is. First of all, look at her eyes. She has fly eyes. You ever try to catch a fly? They see you coming before you realize, because those eyes are like wearing monitors on your head. She can see all around her, and that's very important because she's a forager, okay? And she's wearing, or she has, pollen baskets. The queen doesn't have those. The drone doesn't have those. She has them because she needs them. She's the forager who goes out and pollinates all the flowers and then carries the pollen back to the nest or back to the hive. She lives for only about 40 days. And of course, she develops from a fertilized egg. The first few days, she cleans her cell, just like you have to clean your room. And then she'll get another job. She'll have to take care of the older larva, and then a finer job, the younger larva, which is a little bit harder to do. And then maybe she'll become a nurse bee, or maybe she'll be a scout bee, or maybe she'll be a water bee, or maybe she'll be a wax bee, okay, or housekeeping bee. She has a lot of jobs that she's going to change to. But understand that she is not fertile. She cannot lay fertilized eggs. She is sterile. That means she cannot have fertilized eggs, okay? And there's no way you could change that because, as we'll see a little bit later, the reason why they're sterile, okay? So it's like a grown bee in a child's body, okay? It's fully grown, but not mature. It just cannot perform fertilization or cannot produce a fertile egg. There's 60,000 in the colony, 60,000 of these bees. And what else do? They collect nectar, pollen, water. They have the pollen baskets on their back legs. They build the wax comb. They do the housework. Guess what? They maintain the interior temperatures of the hive. So when you go outside in 20-degree weather and you have your hat and your coat and your mittens on, you know how warm it is in the hive? It is 91 degrees. Because you have 60,000 of these bees fanning their wings to keep warm, okay? So it's very warm. In fact, when it snows, all around the beehive, there's no snow because it's so warm, it melts right away, okay? And they are also guard bees. They do all of these jobs, but the most important job is the nurse bee, because the nurse bees take care of the larva, all right? The nurse bees are the first ones who realize if the queen is not doing her job. Remember, she's got to lay 2,000 eggs a day, and these bees are all emerging. If the queen doesn't get up there and lay an egg in those empty cells, the nurse bees send out an alarm. And you know what they do? They'll say, oh my gosh, they communicate with each other. The queen hasn't been up here in weeks. What are we going to do? We're going to replace her. And in order to replace her, they set up a couple of cells, young larva cells, and they'll feed those babies royal jelly, which is what they give the queen. And those babies will develop into a queen. The other babies, the ones that are not fertile, are given bee bread, which is just pollen and nectar, or just like honey and pollen, that's it. And so they will never develop as a queen. But these new cells, the nurses say, okay, these will be our queens, the first one who emerges, and we'll feed them royal jelly. And sure enough, the very first one that emerges will destroy the other potential queen cells. And she becomes the queen, because then she faces off with the old queen, okay? So that's how this works. That's why the nurse bee is so important. It's very critical that the bees make sure they are producing the many babies that are emerging all the time to keep the hive running smoothly, okay? And of course they have a stinger. So over here, you have, and I'll pass this around, here is a picture of a queen, and she has a color on her back, you see? And it does say 22. It could be 2022. Each year we have a different color to mark the queen, okay? So she only lasts 5 years. After 5 years, those 5 colors start all over again. So if I open my hive and I see a yellow queen, I know that she's 2 years old. You see? Because it's 2024 now. All right, let me pass this around. Okay. All right, and then here's just one other one with one of the worker bees. Also understand that all of the bees that you see on flowers outside, they are coming to the end of their life. They are foragers. That's the most dangerous job. So as the bees get older, they take on different jobs, but the most dangerous one is the forager. It's possible that that bee that you see on the flower maybe has 1 or 2 more days to live, all right? And sometimes they don't even get back to their hive because they work so hard. Okay, let me pass this around. Okay, so now we have the drone. Okay, and here he is, right here. He mates with the queen. He develops from an unfertilized egg. And you might say, well, how could that possibly be? Well, through parthenogenesis, there are certain lower invertebrates, that are able to develop from an egg that is not fertilized, such as a scorpion, okay, and aphids. All right, they are also, when they emerge, they were not fertilized eggs. Okay, so the drone is one of them. He doesn't gather nectar. He doesn't gather pollen. He has no stinger. Okay, there's only 300 to 500 of them. And if you look at this and you look at what he does, he almost does absolutely nothing. He doesn't even stay in the hive. He goes up in the trees, and he has these 2 big bubble eyes. You see how his eyes are different than the worker bee? He has these 2 big bubble eyes to try to spot a queen. If he is unlucky enough to mate with a queen and they mate in the air, he spirals to his death. He dies instantly like that, okay? If he doesn't mate with the queen, in the fall, like now, he decides, you know what? It's a little cold. I think I want to go back in the hive. And you know what the girls do? They say, you're not coming in here. You did nothing. You didn't get any nectar. You didn't get any pollen. You didn't get any water. You didn't build wax. If we let you in, you're just going to raid our refrigerator, and we could starve. So guess what? We're kicking you out. And they die. They kick them out to die. And the following year, the queen will then lay 300 to 500 drone eggs to keep the drone population coming. But now you see, the worker bee, there's 60,000 of them, and they do all these jobs, including deciding if the queen stays or goes, because if she doesn't lay her 2,000 eggs, the nurse bees say, you're out of here, queen, we're getting a new one, you see? Okay, so this is how they function, and these are the jobs they have. So now, when you think about this, who is really in charge? Is it the queen that lays the 2,000 eggs a day and gets taken care of by the attendants? Is it the drone who flies up in the tree and just fertilizes mates with the queen for fertilized egg? Or is it the worker who does all of these jobs and maintains the health of the hive, including controls if the queen stays or goes? So who do you think? Yes? Absolutely. It is the worker bee who's really in charge of the hive. She's the one that takes care of it and makes sure that it's running smoothly. Okay, do we have questions? Yes.
How long can the worker bees run the hive if the queen dies?
Okay, how long can the worker bees run the hive if the queen dies? If the queen dies, the nurses already set up some potential queen eggs, larvae that will become queens, and they take 16 days to emerge. So those 16 days, if they're without a queen, that's okay. But the longer they're without a queen, the more dangerous it is. All right, yes?
What predators do they have besides bears?
Skunks. Skunks are a major predator, and what they'll do is stand up and try to eat chew the bees. And you'll know that you've been attacked by skunks because you'll see chewed up bees like around the beehive. But if you have your beehive raised enough, then when they stand up, the bees will come and sting their stomach and they'll run away. But those are really the only predators that harm the bees. Okay. All right, so this is really the closest we can see what bees see. They really don't see the color red. They see a lot of patterns. They have rods and cones in their eyes like we do, but they cannot, it's not as developed, and they don't see everything like we do. Okay, so basically that's what scientists believe they can see. This is a infrared photo, and they, like I said, they see a lot of patterns. So here's metamorphosis. It's a complete or 4-stage metamorphosis. It starts with, of course, the egg, and then develops into, it looks like a worm, the larva, and then the pupa stage, which is covered with a brown covering. That's the brood. And then here's the brown covering. And then finally, the adult. So if you look at this frame right here, here's the 4 stages. The egg, you can see how tiny it is. It's very tiny. It's so small, it's difficult to see. Then there's 2 pictures of a larva, a small one and a big one. And then the pupa stage, and then finally the adult. So let me pass that around. Okay, so that's the complete stage, metamorphosis stage. But take a look at the way it's divided here. You have the queen, the worker, and the drone. All 3 of them have the egg stage of 3 days. And then the larva stage is different, and so is the pupa, and so is the adult. Notice the queen, who is the biggest bee, only takes 16 days to develop. That's probably like survival, because the longer the hive is without a queen, the more dangerous it is that that hive will go down. I want you to look at this. The larva stage for the drone is 6 to 7 days. It's the longest time in the larva stage. That's very important because that's where we have one of the biggest pests that we have for honeybees. It's called the varroa mite. And the varroa mite lives in the larva stage of the drone because it can live there and reproduce for the longest amount of time. You see? Okay? So some beekeepers, even though they medicate for the varroa mite, sometimes they destroy a lot of the drone brood because it's not necessary. They don't need all those drones. And so they'll destroy the drone brood to get rid of or lower the varroa mite population. So that's another way to control it. And then of course, if you take a look, the worker bee takes 21 days to develop, and the drone, who is a little bit bigger than the worker, takes 24 days.
Angela,
Yep.
how does a beekeeper identify the male larva versus the regular worker bee larva?
You really can only identify it when it's capped, because, all right, just to say, how can you identify the drone larva compared to the worker larva? After it's capped, you will see it's a high cap, and that's how you can see the difference. The worker larva, the capping is very flat, okay? And I'll show you a picture of that. But the drone, it has like a bubble on top, okay?
Does the queen typically lay like all the males in one area?
In a group, in a large area,
group?
yes, she does. She
Okay.
does. They're not sporadically, there is a whole group. So you can identify them. You'll see they look very different, and you can identify it right away. And that question was, does the queen lay the drones together? On most frames, yes, she does. So you'll see a whole group of this brood with a high cap, and those are all drone. In fact, they're usually at the top of the frame, and you'll see them all there. Okay. So take a look at these cells. Look at the queen cell, all right? It looks like a peanut, and that is to accommodate her large abdomen. The worker and the drone cells look similar, but the drone cells are a little bit bigger, okay? So tell me, what is the shape of a honeybee cell? What's the shape, yes? You want to know something? You are absolutely right. Most people will say a hexagon, okay? It looks like that hexagon shape. In fact, like this, what I have on the background, looks like a hexagon. That is because of the wax that is putting pressure on that round cell, causing the sides to flatten. If you ever blew a lot of bubbles and you contained them, you'll see that the sides start to flatten. Okay, so that's really the shape, and you're absolutely right. The shape is round to accommodate the bee, which is like a cylinder. Okay, so here's a picture of what a normal frame looks like. If you look at this, it's football shaped, okay? This brown part here is called the brood. That's where the pupa is developing. It's covered with this brown. It's already past the larva stage, all right? What do you think these holes are? What are those holes? Anybody know? What do you think? What do you think?
Where the baby eggs at?
Yeah, where they came out.
Yeah.
Yeah, so now these all around here, these are the nurses. And guess what? They're checking these holes to see if the queen got up there to lay an egg. And if she doesn't, that's when they decide, oh no, our queen is not being productive. We're gonna change a couple of larva cells, feed them royal jelly, and make them into our new queen, okay? And over here in the corner, this is honey. It has a white covering, see? That's honey on every frame in the hive. There's honey on the corners. And these nurses are taking that and feeding the larva back and forth, and they stay on this frame. You see, even the man is holding this frame, they stay on it because they're very devoted. You see? Okay? So this is what every frame looks like in the hive. There are 10 in each box, and there are 2 boxes. So that's 20 frames that look like that. This is not the honey that we take and harvest. This honey is just for them. That's what they need to get through the winter. Okay? So in the wild, honeybees do not nest in the ground. Yellow jackets do, all right? Or honeybees will go behind bricks by your house, but they will nest in a tree, in the hole of a tree. And take a look at how they made the wax to accommodate the hole where they're gonna live. So a lot of beekeepers looked at that and said, if bees do that to try to accommodate their surroundings, let's see if we can make a design and see if they build their wax on that. And sure enough, they did, you see? So a beekeeper actually made this design, and the bees built their wax on that. So the whole premise of a beehive is to put frames that have a foundation in there, and then the bees will build their wax right on top of there. Okay, so it's extremely orderly. They're very, very orderly. Okay? And that led to our beehives, it was invented by Reverend Lorenzo Langstroth. Look how long ago, in the 1800s. We still use it today. And take a look at what it's composed of. It's very orderly. It has a hive stand, it has a screened bottom board, and then there's this box. This is the box that has 10 frames like the picture I showed you before with the honey on the corners, okay? But there's usually 2 of them, and there's only one showing just so, because there's not enough room. In the springtime, beekeepers sometimes put a queen excluder to prevent the queen from going up into these boxes, which are going to store honey, okay? So here's the box that I would put on top of my hive in the springtime. Now let's think about it. In the spring, there's so much nectar, so many flowers, that if the bees filled up the frame where they lived, there'd be no room for the queen to lay her eggs. It's like you having a house with a basement and an attic. If you fill up the basement, you put your things up in the attic. So beekeepers put one of these boxes on top with empty frames, and the bees will put all of the extra nectar that they really don't need because they don't want to leave room for the queen to lay her eggs. They put it up there, okay, to store it, but they don't know that I'm going to take it, all right? So when it's finished, it will look like this, and I'll be talking about this. This is 5 pounds of honey that's not harvested yet, all right, with the white wax on it. This is what came from this box, all right, but I didn't harvest it. So can you imagine 10 of these in this box? That would be 50 pounds of honey, you see? So some beekeepers, instead of using the medium one, which is this, okay, this is the medium one, they choose the shallow one, which is about 30 pounds when it's filled. All right, so it's strictly preference. And then on top is an inner cover, and then the telescoping outer cover, you see? Okay, so once we finish harvesting, we take these honey supers off. We harvest, and then actually we put them back on so the bees clean up all the stickiness, and then we take them off and leave them off for the winter time. All right, and you end up with 2 of these boxes right here, which consists of your hive, okay? So this is what my hive looks like. Here's your 2 boxes. Inside these 2 boxes, 10 frames in each that look like that other picture with the football shape in the middle and the honey on the corners. So this is the middle of July. It's hot. These bees, there's 60,000 of them. They're hanging out on the porch here. In fact, some of them are like hanging on to each other over here. But you know what's going on in here? The water bees have deposited some water droplets in these boxes, and these bees are fanning their wings. It's air conditioning. So if I put a little piece of paper here, it gets sucked right in because that's how much power there is, a draft. So they're creating their own air conditioning. That's how smart they are, to keep cool. And of course, they're out of the box because it's hot in there, and they know it. All right. If I open my hive, they don't all fly away. These are the nurses. The foragers are already out foraging. The nurses stay on their frames because they're taking care of their babies. Okay, so they just remain there. And then I could lift out those frames. I could put it in an observation hive, take them somewhere to, show, talk about them if I want to, or inspect them. And that's how we take care of our bees. We look in the frames to make sure everything's okay. In the summertime, like in August when there's very few flowers around, it might be necessary, you call that the dearth. It might be necessary to feed them, and so we feed them sugar water. And then, of course, in the wintertime, it will freeze, so we put fondant or little patties on top, which is like a high-density sugar for them to feed on, okay? Because if they don't have flowers, they don't have food. So we have to make sure that there is enough food to get through the winter for them. Questions? Yes?
The native bees, do they produce honey too?
No. Native bees, the question was, do native bees produce honey? No. Your native bees are wonderful pollinators. They are the mason bees, the bumbles, the carpenter bees, a lot of digger bees, ground bees. Very excellent pollinators, no honey. There are 20,000 species of bees here in North America. 6 produce honey, and they're all related to Apis mellifera. They're all species of that. That's why it's so important. We can't duplicate honey. That's why it's important to take care of the honeybee. Okay, so bee behavior, very interesting. All right, they are social insects. They live in a, I knew this was gonna go on. Okay, they live in a, good, we'll look right there. Whoops, nope, that's not gonna, sorry about that. Okay, you know what, we enabled something. Okay, watch later, I'll just leave it like that. Okay, they live in a social group. When a bee finds honey, she doesn't just stay there. She comes back to tell everybody else. And what does she do? She will do a dance. And her dance looks like this, except she will dance on this line here, and then she'll walk around and touch the antennas of the bees around the outside, who then turn around and touch the antennas to communicate with the bees behind them. And then she'll come back and she'll dance more, and she'll come around this way and take care of the ones on the bottom, like playing telephone. That's how they communicate. And that's what she's telling them, where the nectar source is. The longer this line is, she's telling them it's far. If the line she waggles on is short, she's telling them, hey, the nectar's right over there. All right, so quickly, if I look at this, you see the, all right, well, we'll just go one. See the 90 degrees? Suppose she's dancing on a 90 degree angle. You know that the sun is stationary. It is the earth that revolves and rotates around the sun. So you know what she does? As the day goes on, she changes her angle. So maybe she'll dance at a 60 degree angle. So you know the sun is in a different position in the morning than it is in the afternoon. So to identify that nectar source, she will come back to the porch there and she'll dance in a different angle to identify. So you might say, oh my gosh, if they're so smart, why don't they work all night? Two reasons. One reason is that a bat would find them a delicious dessert, chubby little dessert, but the main reason is that they have no GPS. There's no sun. So they can't tell where they're going, okay? And so that's why bees, honeybees go out in the morning. By dusk, they are back in their hive, okay? They don't work all night because they have no GPS. They have no way to tell how to get back to the hive, okay? Swarming is another behavior, perfectly natural. It happens when they get overcrowded. It happens only in May and early June. It won't happen after that because the bees will not have enough time to build the wax and set up another house, another home, to live for the winter, okay? So what happens, this is not a willy-nilly kind of thing. This is planned, all right? In the springtime, when the queen is laying her 2,000 eggs and it gets so crowded, the nurses say, this is going to get very crowded. Half of our hive is going to leave in 2 weeks maybe, with the old queen, okay? And so the nurses will start to set up some queen baby cells, which will take 16 days to emerge. So the new queen will be there in 16 days. Meanwhile, you just saw how big that queen is. How is she gonna fly? She's too big. She's got little tiny wings. How is she gonna fly? Yes?
They're going to help her fly?
They're gonna help her, but they do it a different way. Her attendants put her on a diet, and they will only feed her just to keep her alive. And so her abdomen shrinks, and now her little wings can carry her. So by the time she's ready to fly, they give the signal, and this takes about 2 weeks for them to decide. They give the signal, okay, queen can fly, and the queen goes out with half of the hive. 30,000 bees follow her, and they all are all over the sky. It makes a loud noise. They won't hurt you though. They make a loud noise, and they all cluster on a tree limb. This is like a liquid solid. You could put your hand in there, although I wouldn't suggest it. It just moves. If I put a box underneath and give a good shake, that whole thing will fall in my box, and now I have 2 hives. I have the original one, and I have the new one, you see, with an old queen. who will take care of the bees until she's replaced, you see? So swarming is perfectly natural. It'll only happen in May and early June, and then that's it. But it is a perfectly natural thing, and it's very important for them to swarm. That's the way they reproduce. Okay, honeybee pests. Terrible, this varroa mite. We only got this varroa mite in the 1980s. We never had this before. Okay, so what does this thing do? Look at it over here. It is so huge on a larva, on a pupa bee. Look how big it is. It's almost as big as the eye. But what it does is it interferes with the normal development. It acts like, in other words, our hypothalamus in our brain controls our systems. This organism, it sucks the fat bodies of the bee, which controls the development of systems. And so when the little bee emerges, very often its legs don't work right and it falls off the flower, or its wings are curly and it can't fly, so it dies. So if your hive is infested with varroa mites, you're going to lose that hive. So can you come here for a minute? I need you for a minute. I want to show you what a varroa mite could look like on you. Now, what is your name? So make believe it's a baby bee. First of all, before I show you, what does this remind you of? What do we have that this reminds you of? What? No, it starts with a tick. Ticks. Ticks do the same thing, right? Except they're tiny, they're hard to find. But if it's a baby bee, no, don't be scared. This is what a varroa mite would look like on him. It's tremendous, and sometimes there's 2 or 3 of them. He doesn't have a chance, okay? So Tyler, you're gonna end up with curly wings. You don't want that, right? So that's why, thank you. That's why beekeepers have to medicate for varroa mites, because if you don't, they overcome your beehive and you're going to lose your bees. And as we said before, they like the larva stage of the drone because it's 6 to 7 days and they could stay there and reproduce a longer period of time. You see? Okay? Very, very damaging now. Very damaging. All right. Hive beetles. Hive beetles are little. They do not hurt the bee, but they're dirty. Do you know that bees do not go to the bathroom in their hive? They store everything in their abdomen, and then they fly out and release everything and then come back. So they're very, very clean. No dirt in there. But the hive beetles are not clean. So if your hive is overcome with hive beetles, the bees are going to leave because it's too dirty. Okay, so that is a problem. But a normal, healthy hive can overcome these hive beetles. The other one are wax moths. Look at what they do to the frame. They put this fibrous material over the cells, and the queen can't lay her eggs. So what happens? They leave. So the wax moths are another damaging type of threat. However, if the beehive is strong, it can overcome them. Okay, if it's a small, weak hive, the wax moths will overcome it. There's also 2 diseases. There is American foul brood and European foul brood. American foul brood happens after the cells are capped with this brown substance. And you can see from the stick, it kind of ropes out. It's like a mucousy thing. It turns them into like a mucousy kind of substance, turns the larva into that. And if you look over here, one dead larva can have 100 million spores. So you see how fast that could spread? But we can control that with tetracycline. And since we are supposed to, register our hives, if there's an outbreak of American foul brood, we are notified. And there hasn't been, so we've been very lucky. The other one is European foul brood, which happens before the cell is capped. And what happens is the larva turns into like a brown, rubbery worm kind of looking thing. All right, and it won't survive, and it's dried out. Okay, questions? Okay, we'll keep going. Good. So why keep bees? Well, lots of reasons. First, number 1, pollination. They perform 80% of all pollination worldwide. 1/3 of our food supply relies on bees. One bee colony can pollinate 300 million flowers a day. That's one colony. I have 21. So look at all those flowers that are being pollinated. 70% of our major crops are pollinated by bees. The value of bee pollination is about 20 billion. It's actually, that's conservative. I think it's more than that. And 75% of the world's flowering plant species need pollination to reproduce. So if you haven't had dinner, next time, like tomorrow, I want you to think about this. For every third teaspoon or tablespoon or forkful that you put in your mouth, you can trace that to the action of a bee, okay? Now you might say, oh, I don't eat vegetables, I only eat meat. Well, guess what? The bees had to pollinate the grasses for the cows, you see? How many of you like chocolate? I do. Well, we wouldn't have chocolate if we didn't have bees pollinating the cacao plant. So everything can be traced back to the action of a bee. That's how important they are as our pollinators. Okay. Second thing, honeybee decline. I'm sure you've all heard of colony collapse disorder. But you see, it's not due to one thing. There's 4 parts of it. Pesticides, that's number 1. Rapidly spreading pests and diseases like the varroa mite and other viruses. Constantly changing climate. A couple of years ago, we had an early spring, and then we had a frost. And the flowers bloomed, the bees were out, and then all of a sudden they all died because we had a frost. So that was a problem. Increase of monoculture. Monoculture is when a commercial beekeeper takes his bees and he pollinates the apple orchards. And then he packs them up and he goes down to Florida and pollinates the orange groves. And then he packs them up and goes to California for the almonds. Well, if you only ate bananas, you wouldn't be very healthy. And so scientists are realizing that by minimizing the type of food they can forage on, they can't fight the diseases. So that is a concern, the increase of monoculture, and we need these foods to survive. So it's a delicate balance. Last year, we lost approximately 43.9% of our honeybee hives. And it's been like that. It's been a constant like that. So that's why we have to be more conscious of it. All right, the production of honey. It's the only food created by an organism that has nutritional, medicinal, therapeutic, and cosmetic value, okay? You cannot duplicate it. It's loaded with antioxidants, phytonutrients, minerals, vitamins, etc. It will never, ever spoil. And you might say, how could that be? Well, there's a couple reasons. First of all, in order to create or to make the honey ready and cover it with this white wax, the bees fan their wings over that nectar until they've reduced it to less than 18% water. And guess what? Bacteria, fungus, nothing can live in that environment. The second reason is that honey is hygroscopic, which means it draws fluid out. It desiccates or dries out some things or everything. So if an organism like a fly lands in your honey, it's going to die because the honey will cause the fluid in that organism to rush the other way, the opposite of osmosis, you see? And so it desiccates it, and so it dies, so it will not live in that environment. And honey is slightly acidic. So with those 3 things combined, it never goes bad. Now you might say, oh yeah, but mine got like rocks on the bottom. That's perfectly fine. That's crystallized. Honey is a natural sugar. In fact, it's 25% sweeter than regular sugar. So maybe you should think about using that instead of white sugar, okay? Well, if yours crystallizes on the bottom, just open the top, put it in a warm water bath, and heat it gently, and it will reliquefy, okay? And you might have to do that again in a couple of months, but that's all you need to do. Don't put it in the microwave because the microwave will destroy all of its antioxidants. Humans have been, see look, they found honey over 5,000 years old and it was crystallized, but it was perfectly fine. Humans have been keeping bees and benefiting from honey for over 9,000 years, and it's estimated that the average American consumes 1.2 pounds of honey, although I guarantee I eat a lot more than that because I put it on everything. The difference between raw honey and pasteurized honey is that raw honey is not processed, it's not heated. And I'm going to show you the harvesting, what goes into harvesting and why it's called raw honey. Nothing is added to it. It's not heated, it flows into, flows right very, very easily, so it doesn't have to be heated. The only thing that might be is that it might be filtered, okay? But pasteurized honey is heated, it's processed. In fact, if you look at it, and this is the honey that you will find in ShopRite or Stop and Shop, if you look at the back, you'll see there's things added to it. That's not raw honey, okay? The best honey you can get is local honey. It's within 60 miles of where you live. That's local honey, raw honey. That's the best honey you can get. Honey in Florida is delicious. In Williamsburg, it's terrific. But if you have allergies, not going to help you. It has to be local honey if you want help with your allergies, because it's like getting a flu shot. You're taking in a little bit of what you're allergic to, and gradually you develop an immunity to that. Okay? And of course, it's fun. Honeybees keep the community blooming beautifully. It's great for health and wellness. You can make crafts. I make beeswax candles and hand cream and lip balm. And of course, there's a thing that's kind of new, making mead. In 2013, there were 150 meaderies in the United States. Now there's over 300. Mead is the Viking wine, okay? It's sweet wine made with honey. Okay, questions? Yes?
Wait, do males attract,
You mean the drone bees?
yeah,
They're looking for queens. They only want to look for queens. Is that what you were asking? Okay, do the drone bees attract the worker bees, right? You're thinking? Because they're female, but they're not able to lay fertilized eggs. No, the drones go up in the tree and they way up high and they're waiting for queens to circle. That's all they want. Okay? So maybe you're thinking about beekeeping. Maybe you're thinking about beekeeping. Well, let's see, what do you need? You need a hive, and there's the approximate prices. You need the equipment, which is the protection, okay? Of course, you'll be able to wear these beautiful gloves, all right? You need a couple of other pieces of equipment, such as a hive tool. This is what I use to break apart the boxes, okay? Because the bees will seal it with propolis, and it's like a sticky substance. So if I have to look in the bottom box, I need this to pry it apart, okay? You would need a bee brush, because, and you'll see in a few minutes, this is especially used for harvesting to sweep away the bees. It's very gentle. It won't hurt their wings or their legs. So after we're finished, feel free to come up and take a look at these things. You need a smoker, okay? So what's the function of the smoker? Anybody know? Yes?
it is air where it's like air where like,
I think I know exactly what you mean. All right, so I'll tell you what this is for, or what this does.
so the bees won't sting you.
Yes, exactly right. So the bees won't sting you. It relaxes them. I don't burn paper in here because paper will come out, it will burn the bee. So what I burn in here is pine needles. It makes a white smoke. And that smoke interferes with their ability to send out an alarm. So it calms them down. They become docile. So whenever I open my hive, I always use a smoker. It's the polite thing to do. It's like knocking on the door and say, hey, everybody, I'm coming in. So they don't feel threatened. They're relaxed. All right? So the smoker is really very, very important. And of course, you need medications and sugar syrup for the summertime, the sugar syrup and medications for the varroa mites. Okay? And you need your bees. You can't do anything without the bees. And how do they come? They come two ways. They either come as a package like this, which is about 3 pounds. The queen is in the middle. Or they come as what we call a nuke or a nucleus. And take a look at this. There's 5 frames. But what's important about this is that there's already wax. They're already working. The queen is in there. The foragers are out bringing nectar back into the hive. They still have to build their wax. They still have to make their home. So there's a delay here, okay? So the nuke is the sure way to go. And if you look at this, if you're interested in beekeeping, well, what do you need, or what can you do? You can have 3 hives for every quarter of an acre, not to exceed 40 hives on a piece of land, because then they won't have enough food, okay? And for every 2 colonies, you could have one of those nukes, okay? But you don't have to. But that's like a temporary combination, combining some hives or separating them, making new ones. They must be located 10 feet away from any property line, like your neighbor, 20 feet from any roadside path or sidewalk, and there should be a 6-foot fly zone, which means that you put bushes so that they fly up instead of out into your neighbor's yard. And in the first year, you should be taking a course, and the course is online. It's very easy. Sometimes there's hands-on experience, and the New Jersey Beekeepers Association, we offer it in each one of our associations. So it's easy to find an online course. Questions? Yes?
Wait, but why do they cover the queen bee?
Why do they cover the queen bee?
Yeah.
What do you mean, why do they cover the queen bee?
Like, why do you like?
Cover her?
Yes.
Oh, well, they take care of her. They want to protect her. Maybe that's what you mean. All right, so the attendants will go around her and protect her. Yes.
I have a
Okay, so I
question.
understand what you mean.
I have a question
Yes.
for Angela.
Oh.
Is there a database to search for local honey in our area?
Yes, on the New Jersey Beekeepers Association, under the products tab, it lists what products are available and where they are and the phone numbers. So that's all on that website. In addition to a swarm control. So if you have a swarm in your backyard, you put in your zip code and they will identify beekeepers in the area who are able to take care of the swarm. So it's a great resource. Okay, so why do we need to save the bees? Well, look at these facts. They've been producing honey from flowering plants for 10 to 20 million years. One bee colony can pollinate 300 million flowers each day. Okay, in 1947, there were 6 million hives. Now we have half of that. As you saw before, we lose about 43.9% of our beehives, almost 50%. And same thing in the United Kingdom. In Europe, they've had the same problems. All right, so what could this decline mean for us? Well, devastating for our food supply, right? Our cost of food would shoot up high. It would have an effect on wildflowers and animal life because the bees pollinate the little berries, the flowers for the berries that chipmunks eat, and then hawks eat them, and up the food chain it goes. And we'd have a world without honey. The food production would go up because we would have to hand pollinate things. They already do that in China. So that's why it would be so expensive. How can you help? Well, support local and organic farmers, so buy your raw local honey. Practice organic gardening at home. Plant bee-friendly wildflowers and shrubs, especially your natives, the native flowers and shrubs. Bees are thirsty, so put a bird bath out there. Put rocks in there because bees don't swim. They drown. So they need the rocks to crawl down and drink the water. Only buy local raw honey. Say no to pesticides. Stop weeding. Here's a question. What is the first flower that comes out in spring on your lawn that nobody wants? Yes, the dandelion. It is a tremendous nectar source. If you looked at it, it's not a flower, it's a floret. There's so much nectar in there, and yet we destroy it. If we would only leave it alone for 2 weeks till they finish blooming, before they form the seed heads, and then cut those down. But that's, when I see the first dandelion, I do the happy dance, and my bees are on it, all right? And they're thrilled. That's a tremendous source for them right after the winter. Educate yourself, which is what you're doing right now. Make your own wild bee house. You could make a mason bee house like that. You could even just use straws or roll up paper and put it in a flower pot like that. Or take a piece of wood and drill holes in it. The mason bees go crazy. They're all filled up right there, okay? And the mason bees are wonderful pollinators. They're friendly bees. They don't sting you. They're little. They're like iridescent. They're fun to watch, and they're great pollinators. So that's a lot of fun to raise your own mason bees. Save the bees by planting these. Look at all those plants. In fact, I have a brochure here if you wanted to take it home. In here is what that poster is right there. It has a lot of the plants that bees like. So you're free to, please, feel free to take that home. Don't forget the bulbs like crocus, like daffodil, snowdrops, those. And also your herbs. They love the herbs. Basil, parsley, sage, let it flower. And they love that. Questions? Okay, good. All right, May 20th is World Bee Day, May 20th. Very interesting date. First of all, it was unanimously adopted by the General Assembly in 2017, but May is the month when in the Northern Hemisphere, okay, it's the beginning of our nectar flow. That's the date that all beekeepers are always waiting for, May 20th. That's the beginning of the nectar flow, when all the flowers are blooming and the bees are all over the flowers, gathering the nectar to make honey. But it's also, in the Southern Hemisphere, like Australia, the beginning of their harvest. So it's an interesting date. And it's the birthday of Anton Jansa, who is the pioneer of modern beekeeping. All right, so now we're coming to the end, the harvest. The harvest is truly a labor of love, okay? You really have to want to do that, right? You gotta want to do it. It's a lot of work, but this is what's entailed. There I am with my bee suit. I am sweeping off the bees from that frame so that I can put it in my bucket there and take it inside the garage to harvest. So here I am, I have a knife, it's a hot knife, and I shear off this top layer of wax, the front and the back, okay? All that goes in that tote, which nothing goes to waste, it's gonna be used again, okay? Sometimes I have to go in the corners with this tool to scrape out some of the wax that I can't get with my knife, with my hot knife. So I use that uncapping tool, okay? And then there's my extractor. It's like a centrifuge, and I put a bucket underneath that's gonna catch the honey that comes out when I spin it, all right? And so I put my 4 frames, here's one, why isn't that going? Here's 1, 2, 3, and here's 4. So I put 4 frames, and it's a hand crank, so it takes a lot of manual labor, all right? So I start spinning it, and there's my first drop of honey. I always take a picture of the first drop. Okay, so there's my first drop. It's going into the bucket, and then I spin, and there's more honey, and I spin some more, okay? Now, if you look at this, there's some wax in here, and I kid you not, there are some legs, there's some wings, there's some body parts, which you don't want in your honey. So before it hits the bottom of the bucket, it is going through 3 filters, a 600, a 400, and a 200 gauge filter, okay? So it goes through that, and it goes to the bottom, and all the cappings I clean with a solar melter, okay, to make beeswax. This is my beeswax, and this is what I use to make my candles, my lip balm, and my hand cream after it's really clean. This is not cleaned 100%, but most of it is, okay? So nothing goes to waste, as I said. And then I end up with my honey. See? And this honey is different colors. The color depends on what the bees are foraging on. The honey that I harvested just like 2 weeks ago, which is unusual because I rarely do that in the fall, is much, much darker because they are foraging on goldenrod and asters and things like that. It's a heavy kind of, and it tastes heavy. It's dark and it's heavy, has a different taste. The spring honey is very light. This is my very first jar of honey. It's going on 11 years old, okay? no crystallizing. Because when I filter it, I get a lot of that extra sugar crystals out. So that's what honey would look like. And a lot of people say, well, how did you get that name, Bella Bee? And I'll tell you how I got it. I have a thoroughbred, her name is Bella, and I put some hives in her field. And when I'd come back from working on them, I would say to my family, oh, I worked on Bella's bees today. And the name evolved to Bella Bee. And that's Bella. So there's Bella. She's responsible for the name, and she keeps me hopping. And so, as a conclusion, I hope that it raised this presentation raised your awareness of the importance of our honeybees and what you can all do on a small scale to make a difference, because we all can make a difference, and if we do, there'll be a big impact. Okay? Questions? Anybody have any questions? Okay.
Wait a second. There
Yeah.
might be
Oh,
one
this
thing
question.
a little bit more.
Okay.
Do you have a website where?
I have a Facebook page. It's Facebook, Bella Bee Honey. So if you would like, come on up, take a look at some of the equipment. You can handle it. Read some of the things that are here, and feel free to browse. Take brochures if you would like. Okay? And
Actually, you said
yeah.
you've been doing this 11 years?
11, going on 11 years, yes. In fact, that's very interesting. I retired from teaching in 2014, and when I was an adult, as a teacher in my 30s, I developed terrible allergies. And my friend said, you need local honey. And I didn't understand, because I love honey, but I used to get it in ShopRite, whatever. I didn't realize the value of local honey. So she gave it to me. And I put it on my cereal, on my graham crackers, on anything, ice cream. I made peanut butter and honey sandwiches. It's delicious. And my yogurt, everything. And so it was part of my diet. In 15 months, I didn't have my spring allergies. I used to get so sick. I would get fever, upper respiratory problems, terrible. And all that medication I was taking, it's terrible stuff. So anyway, I didn't have my spring allergies, and I thought maybe whatever's blooming didn't bloom yet that I'm allergic to. Sure enough, in the fall, nothing. And I have been allergy-free ever since. So honey is a part of my diet, and I will keep having it because I love it. But when this happened to me as a teacher, I decided when I retire, this is what I want to do. It was just so fascinating to me. So after I retired, 2014 is when I started. So going on 11 years. Yeah. And that's my story. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it, and I hope everyone learns something and
Okay.
gets to enjoy.
Okay. Thank you for coming.